folks, Engineer 775 here. I've been excited for this day to do this test or comparison of two hybrid inverters. If you've been on the internet looking for a hybrid inverter, you've run across these two brands, the EG4 or the EG18K-PV and the Sol-Ark 15K. If you watch my channel, you know that I've done a lot of Sol-Ark 15Ks. So I keep hearing so much about this inverter and I've never had the opportunity to put my hands on it. So I said, why don't I do a head-to-head comparison of the two machines? You know me, you think that I'm only Sol-Ark. Well, I've had good success with this machine and I've been with Sol-Ark for a long time. However, there's a lot of talk about this inverter, and there has been for the last couple of years. And so you hear things in DIY forums and all over the place, and there's claims, and there's a lot of spec sheet comparisons, but not real life power comparisons and testing. And so that's really what I wanted to do. And in order to do that, I wanted to take the battery out of the equation. So we have some Discover Helios, fantastic battery, amazing BMS. That's another whole video. But it's a wonderful partner to Sol-Ark. And they're also we have this with the Lux Power protocol set in here now. So we're actually closed loop between these two batteries and the EG4. But for me, I really wanted to take the battery out of the equation. That can be a separate video. I wanted to compare these two machines. They're very similar. They're hybrids that pretty much do the same thing. There's not a feature on this inverter that this one doesn't have. We're going to talk about what they can do within those specifications and with those features. So again, it's a hybrid inverter. And I'm going to talk a little bit I want to talk about the naming convention before I get into the inner workings. I'm just opening this up. The confusing thing that I always wonder is, like, why are they using this naming convention? And they're not hiding anything. They tell you it's 18,000 watts of PV. So it's pretty straightforward, except most inverters in the industry are rated on their AC output. And the 15K actually outputs a full 15K continuous. The 18K-PV is a 12,000 watt machine. It's a 12 kW machine, and it can never produce more than 12 kW on the AC side. But it doesn't make any sense why they did this, other than when people see 18 is bigger than 15, I want the 18, possibly. So again, spec sheet comparisons are something that we will talk about. And I think that in some ways, Sol-Ark has undersold, and in some ways, and I'll help you understand this, that they have kind of oversold their specs. So the name is what kind of misleading, because they're talking DC and this is talking AC. So right off the bat, there's confusion, and most people don't even know what PV means, photovoltaic. And so they compare 18 to 15. Oh, I want the 18. Oh, and the 18 is less money than this. So let me talk about the money and get that out of the way. This inverter is $48.95. This inverter is $62.50. Now, if you go cost per kilowatt, there's only like a 2% difference. This is $417 per kilowatt. This is $408 per kilowatt. We're going to see how they do head to head. All right, as we continue to discuss the differences between the two machines, one of the biggest differences that I see is the amount of solar claimed by EG4 that can go into this machine versus what Sol-Ark has for this machine. I keep scratching my head. I hear all these things on the internet, but I couldn't put my hands on it and wrap my mind around it until I actually wired this up to my solar array. So this is fully installed, and the MPPT channels are totally different between the two. So that's one of the things I wanted to point out. You have 3 MPPTs. It has a 25 amp MPPT on MPPT number 1. On 2 and 3, they're 15 amp, which in today's solar modules would mean single strings, or the only way you could wire this up with single strings. So I had to rewire my array that was working on this inverter to make it work with that inverter. So both machines, and we'll run this one tomorrow, they're going to receive the same amount of solar, and we're also throwing an AC coupling as a bonus. So these are 26 amp MPPTs. They're a lower voltage, and I will say that after installing these for so many years, I know that the spec sheet is not quite, it can do a lot more than the spec sheet says. So please don't purchase, I know you have no other choice in some cases to purchase a machine and make a comparison based on a specification sheet, but real world would tell you totally different. You can put more solar on this machine than you can put on that, and I'll show you why. You can only do 4 strings on this machine. You can put 6 strings on this, and they're 26 amps each. So it's easy for me to put 23, 24 kilowatts on a 15K. They claim 21 kilowatts. It was 18 in the spec sheet, but they are also saying you can put 21. I don't know where in the world you could put 21 on this thing, and I'm not picking on it. I really want to know because of temperature compensation. Yes, this is a 600 volt input. This is a 500 by the spec sheet, but it's closer to 550. And we'll talk more about that. So with 4 strings and the panels that I'm dealing with, and the other caveat is even though the manual says the voltages can be different, we're finding out that that's not truly the case. They need to be similar voltage strings for the inverter to actually work. So there have been some tests with running at different voltages to do shade mitigation, that kind of thing. It doesn't work. They need to be similar voltages. That's a limitation. So 4 strings at a higher voltage. I don't know how they wire 21.6. Remember, when you do your sizing, you have to compensate for where you are, for how cold it gets on the coldest day, or you can totally blow up either one of these machines if you go over that VOC input. So I don't know how they get 21K. Maybe on the equator, but not in Pickens, South Carolina. They can't put 21K on there, not with the panels that I'm using. So be careful about thinking that you can put that much PV on this machine. Again, in choosing these machines, these two, they both work. They're both hybrids, and they are the hub of the system. So everything, the design of your system is based on how this operates, So I've always been one, don't skimp on the inverter. It is everything. It's the heart of your ESS, your energy storage system. And I know a lot of people just kicking tires and looking for the lowest price. This is not necessarily the lowest price if you go based on performance. You're going to get the 15K to be equal in cost. But I think a more premium product. And why do I say that? And the other thing I want to point out, and we're going to kind of talk through commissioning next. So let's do that. We've kind of talked about the solar, and let's talk about commissioning. We're going to talk about the commissioning of either machine. And before I do that, again, you're going to say, I'm so biased. All I do is Sol-Ark. And I have hundreds of these out. We monitor over 220 systems with Sol-Arks on there, both single and parallel systems. So yes, I have a lot of experience with Sol-Ark, and not much, this is really my first 18K that I've been able to put my hands on and not just watch YouTube video reviews of this inverter. And I've watched a lot of those, but none of those do what I'm trying to do here, a real life comparison. So in terms of commissioning, there's a couple things that I did not like right off the bat. It kind of freaked me out to land high-stranded battery cables into mechanical lugs. I know it's legal and you can do it. Doesn't mean, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. And throughout their manual, they talk about wherever there's a stranded wire to use a ferrule, to put a ferrule on there, crimp it down there so you have an equal distribution, better conductivity. So first of all, a couple things. These lugs are limited to 2-aught wire. I don't think I've used 2-aught wire since installing a Sol-Ark. I use 4-aught battery cable. I just don't want to waste a watt. And so we use a heavy duty maybe overbuilt, high-stranded Cobra Flex type wire. And then when I come to the EG4, I can only land 2-aught in here. So that kind of bothers me. Now with them paralleled like they are, yes, that's more than enough for what the machine is capable of. So good quality battery cable, it's very difficult to get all those strands put in there. And if you got strands hanging out, you got, and they have some good dividers, so you're probably not going to short circuit. But you definitely want to go back after running this at all, because it gets hot and cold. You want to retighten and retorque all these connectors to the specification in the manual, because they're going to loosen up. And when you take them back out of here, they're completely deformed. It's not what you want to do with a battery cable, in my opinion. So I didn't like that at all. And then this type of screwdriver insertion, kind of a speaker wire installation in the MPPTs, I'm not a fan of either. So in comparison with the Sol-Ark, you've got kind of the Wago type latches, super strong mechanical connection. I like the way that the PV is connected into the MPPTs. And then on the Sol-Ark battery, I'm always landing 4-aught cable with lugged cables, either pre-lugged by a manufacturer or we do them ourselves, mechanical lugs. And then we have these branch connectors. So I'm a lot of times, like we just did a job with 700 feet of battery cable. If I had to do that, I would have 1,400 feet of battery cable. So that's an example of, you know, saving some money, less wire, less space, but even better performance. So that was, in commissioning this thing, that was probably the biggest heartburn I had, was putting those battery cables in these mechanical lugs. Yes, anybody can do it. It's just, it just wasn't normal. I've never done this before. It's always been a lugged battery cable. And I don't like proprietary cables. I like to make my own lugs. Anyway, my own crimps. We also, with this, the CTs, what I do like, the CTs came already pre-wired with an Ethernet connector on them and just plug in. Super nice and easier than the Sol-Ark CTs. So this was kind of cool for putting the CTs in. I really like that. Again, the closed loop communication was super smooth, not an issue. Similar, same as Sol-Ark. What else can I tell you? Oh, we AC coupled some microinverters into the machines. We've AC coupled both of them, and that works fantastic. There's not a problem there. So now I will say, I'm not totally used to the interface yet. We do have it working on, obviously you can see on the screen here. I have the solar turned off right now so you can hear me. And I'm going to turn solar on in a little bit and you'll see what I mean. And so you can operate from the screen, you can operate from a laptop, you can operate from their monitoring app. And I don't see any big problems with the monitoring app. I'm getting the same output. There is a 4-minute delay of responsive information coming in. So you can go on the app and refresh and it'll go out to the server and come back. Okay, so commissioning, very straightforward, grid, load, gen, batteries, they're so similar. The machines are so similar. There's not a big difference when it comes to commissioning, except for the way the wires are attached. Okay, one of the cool things that I don't know why we were so rough on this template, because we weren't used to a template. So Sol-Ark doesn't come with a template for mounting the bracket that holds the weight of the inverter. And they are both comparable. They're within 5 pounds, I think, of each other. They're both very heavy, and you want to do a good job mounting it. And mounting is usually done in relationship to a surface, whether it's a wiring trough or gutter. And, you know, and it's a no-brainer. And I hope Sol-Ark adopts this, but they make a nice template to mount the bracket that holds this heavy-duty inverter on the wall. So that was really nice during the installation process to have that. And I was like, wow, I've put hundreds of these things up, and we put it up sometimes, so it's not perfect, take it back down. And then, you know, it's just nice to have a template. It's so simple. You are also able to connect, if you have an Android, you can Bluetooth to the dongle, and that's kind of a cool feature. There's some features, some software features that are superior, I think, to the Sol-Ark, and you can download and export PDF files and get some data out of the machine. What, you know, EG4 is now where Sol-Ark was in terms of its servers. So all the information on this machine does go back through Chinese servers, and it's back and forth, which is where Sol-Ark, which is one of the big complaints that my customers had. It's like, why are we taking all this data, and can I be shut down? And people are pulling their Wi-Fi dongles out and very frustrated about this not being American. So it is now. Everything is going through an AWS, an Amazon server on the Sol-Ark now. So, but you know, so not to pick on EG4, they're probably heading there. They're just not there now. So everything, all communication goes back through China. And to add to that, I could be wrong, but I do not think there are any field serviceable repair parts like grid relays. I think a lot of the relays that are in here, that are also here, they're soldered in. I do not think that they are field serviceable. Again, this is fully assembled in Texas, individual parts. This is kind of made in China and sent to Signature Solar or EG4 Electronics. But I never saw a list of field service parts. When there is a failure, which has been rare, I've replaced. I mean, I've seen things like a screw loose on a grid relay, just a quality issue. But to be able to replace that relay, I can replace the grid relays in this machine. I can replace boards in this machine, MCU boards, control boards, screens. I don't know if that, I don't think you can do that with the EG4 inverter at this point. So I would say that. So commissioning wise, fairly straightforward. The app works. I'm not an expert in it because this is my first one, so I didn't really want to talk too much about the usability. It's very tiny, so you better have your glasses on. It's hard to see, much easier to see this. And most of my customers are older and have eyesight like I do. So it's a very small screen, but everything works. It's starting to come on. So I'm going to turn the solar on, folks. And again, what we found, in cameras are never good at picking up sound on a YouTube video. I'm just going to tell you, this is super loud compared to the Sol-Ark 15K. So you don't know that. And if you never bought one of these versus this, you're going to hopefully put this in a place where you don't have to hear it. And it is not based on the temperature of the machine. It's based on the power going through the machine. And so these fans are on a lot longer. I think I've mentioned that before. Everybody around here, because this is what we do, is install solar systems, notice the noise. And it's an irregular noise. It's an up and down with the fans whirring, okay? So we don't understand that. I mean, I do understand, one of the things that they solved that Sol-Ark had a problem with is the vertical venting. On the 12K, not an issue, but on the 15K, it's a problem because you can't mount it directly to a gutter unless the gutter has air channels in it, which Discover made a nice E-way for that, a nice gutter for that. So this is all open. That's why this inverter is taller than this inverter. There's a lot missing behind here to allow for the fans and airflow. And that's what's different in why they're the same weight. They have the same size to them, same size everything component-wise, I think. But the reason for this cutout is to allow the air to vent vertically, which gives you more room when you're installing, if you're paralleling units, so you can be closer together. All right, so I think that is it on the commissioning, but pretty straightforward. The time to install, roughly the same, except for those battery cables. That took me a lot longer because I was nervous about doing it. I didn't have any 2-aught ferrules. And here she goes. She's working. And it just keeps getting louder. Can you hear me? So it keeps getting louder. It's loud. Now, is this machine different than any other ones out there? I don't know. I'm just telling you, this is extremely loud compared to the 15K. So don't let anybody deceive you and say, this runs cooler than this machine. It only runs cooler because the fans are going to blow your eardrums out for the day. All right. So just trying to do an honest review of this, but both work. Just the naming convention is huge. The amount of power on the solar side is questionable. I think the 15K can support more just on real world installation experience. Also seeing DIYers make a mistake and wire this wrong and it not failing. I know this and 15K can handle a lot more solar than the spec sheet says. I also know that it produces more AC power throughput than the Lux Power machine, the EG4 machine. So when you do your cost analysis, do it per kilowatt, not just what the MSRP is on the website you're buying it from. All right, I think that's it right now. We're going to do some testing, some real world testing next. We're going to run loads. We're going to check motors, EVs. We're going to let it make its noise. We're really going to work it hard. And one of the things, the challenge, we've been kind of wondering if it can actually do 12,000 watts AC continuous without overheating. And so we're going to test that out because I am net metered here. I can dump every watt this thing can make back to the grid. So let's do some real world testing. All right, I couldn't figure out exactly how to get this thing to do 12 kilowatts continuous because I needed some support from the battery. And so I called tech support again, which by the way is the third time I've called in today to EG4. Really, it's Signature Solar's tech support. And I got 3 different guys and they were all great and super helpful each time. So I've been working with this tech support from Sol-Ark for many, many years, and they have different levels, level 1, level 2. And, it's kind of unfair because I've been with them for a long time, so I know who to call and who to talk to if I get in trouble. But both tech support is great. I think they have like 20 people at Signature Solar. I know at EG4 they might have less, But when I deal with working with Signature Solar, they've got about 20 techs available. The 3 that I've used so far or have talked to have been fantastic. So I will give them that. They're getting a lot better with their tech support. And we've just turned the grid off. Hard to see from that distance, but we've turned the grid off, and we are AC coupling. I wanted to show that the inverter has no problem AC coupling. I spent kind of a lot of time with the app, and that's been fun because there's some features on the app that I don't have in the Sol-Ark. Like I like the force battery charge. Like if you knew a storm was coming, you could hit that force charge, get your battery charged up. It's simple to do versus turning time of use settings out. A little more complicated on the 15K. It's just a really quick and handy button. If you got a tornado watch or a storm is on the way, you can top your battery off because you're planning on not having any grid. So we're basically right now just simulating grid down. It is AC coupled. It's islanding. It's doing what it's supposed to. I'm going to run a inductive load that I don't think it can handle. If it handles it, I'll be really impressed on my compressor. So I'm going to turn that on and see how it performs.
I'm trying.
It did not do it. Okay, so I killed the breaker to the compressor. Now it should work. Yes, so power comes back on pretty quick. I think it was less than a minute, about a minute. So it failed trying to start that Ingersoll Rand compressor, which is, you know, that thing is, the inrush is about 130 amps. So that's like 31,000 watts. So I didn't think it would. It tried, but it couldn't start it. So, which is not a fault of this machine. It's just an inductive load that neither one of these machines can handle. So I just wanted to see how it behaved in a grid down AC overload condition. And that's what we just went through. So I turned the breaker off to that nuisance load, and the building's back up and running, and we're running our HVAC and everything else. So good test. All right, for our next test on the EG18, we're going to run over 12K off grid. We have the grid is off. We're in the EPS mode, and so emergency power mode. I learned how to clear the warnings that from when the grid went off. So I enabled that. That's cleared up. So we're going to run around a 13 kilowatt load right now with an EV charger, which is a good constant 10 kW on top of my baseline, which is about 3. And we're going to see how this measures up. I do have the AC coupling also going on here, and there's solar support. So we have AC-DC coupling. We're off grid, and we're going to turn the EV on now and see what it does. Okay, so we of course use our solar to have free fuel for our EV, and this runs about, this is a level 2 charger, runs around 40 amps. So I just plugged it in. We'll see, we're off grid now, so the charger just kicked on, so we need to go back to the inverter and see what's going on. It's at, the car's at a 54%, and let's go see how long it holds. Okay, all right, so it hasn't shut down yet, which is cool. So we're running 13.8 kilowatts. Now we are AC coupled and DC coupled. So we're running off of 10's coming out of the battery. So it's holding. I think the AC coupling is really helping us. But we're running at 12.9. So we're running over what the spec sheet says this does, which is 12K. But there's, I think it runs like 14K with PV for 5 minutes. And I'd have to look at the spec sheet to be exact on that. So we can do that. So it's running over its nameplate, but let's look at the spec sheet. All right, so the AC couple should go off. We're running at 12.9. The spec sheet, just so you know, can run with PV for 10 minutes at 14,700 watts. So we're under that, but it is running over. So the PV is allowing it to run. It'll run for 5 minutes at 15.5. We could also run it without PV and see how it does too. It'll run, so we can turn PV off and see how she does on battery. Our battery was full when we started our test. So we're just running on battery. We're running a 12.9 kilowatt load. Let's load up beyond the 12.9 and get it closer to the spec sheet. Okay. Yeah, we're at 13.6. So you're getting a 13.5. It should run without PV for 10 minutes at this load, or right at what the spec sheet specifies for the 10 minute. That's perfect. So we got a good consistent load. These are not inductive loads. We're not running motors right now. We're running an EV charger. We're running a heat gun. We're running the base load of my office, and we're sitting at 13.6, 13.5, which it should run for 10 minutes without any support but battery. No grid, no PV, no AC couple. Okay, we'll be back. Okay, as we continue to try to figure out what's going on this, you'll see there's a fault on the inverter. We get up to 131 degrees centigrade, and it did finally shut down. So the first time the inverter got up to 120, I called EG4, actually Signature Solar, and asked them, when does this thing shut down? Because we've had several over temps and faultings on doing this test, which made me real nervous. So anyway, they were going to get back to me. They did via email, thankfully, and they did say at 120 degrees it should shut down. However, this did not shut down on the third overheat till it was 131 degrees centigrade. The temperature fault, as you see the menu, again, I'm fumbling through the menus because I'm new to the inverter, but we definitely got some temperature over range faults. I'm going to turn the grid back on to it and see. There's a lot of clicking. No icon though. There we go. One. Yeah, export the grid. Down to 93. Still pretty hot. Okay, just as a wrap, you'll see the Sol-Ark is on. We're going to do the same test that we performed on the EG4 18K-PV. We did have to shut it down. We were worried about the overtemps. We had 3 temperature faults with this machine. EG4 responded, Signature Solar tech team, that 120 is supposed to be when it shuts down. But according to the display, it went up to 131 degrees. Super hot. I mean, super hot to touch on the front. So it kind of made me nervous. So we uninstalled it. And we're going to run the same tests on the Sol-Ark 15K. So again, just quick reminders of things that I liked and didn't like. I really liked the template. The installation was fairly simple, straightforward, just as fast as a 15K. But what I didn't like was the MPPTs are not as flexible as the Sol-Ark. 326 amp MPPTs can do shade mitigation for you on a roof, where this seemingly cannot handle different voltages. And for whatever reason, it says in the spec sheet it can, but when you talk to Signature Solar, they say no, they need to be similar. So that's greatly limiting the amount of solar you can actually put on this inverter in most places in the United States. This one put a lot more solar on it. So these guys oversell their spec sheet. This one is undersold on their spec sheet. This inverter, again, has this weird quirky battery cable. I can't land 4-aughts, and I also have to strip and put them in mechanical lugs. That's something I would definitely change if I could, if I had some input there to Signature Solar. Again, there's some basic things. Transfer time, internal transfer time on the transfer switch in this machine is 4 milliseconds. It's 20 milliseconds here. So if you live in a place with unstable grid, you're going to drop devices, clocks, things are going to drop out with a 20 millisecond transfer time. So overall, yes, it works, but we really worked it hard I think I made it to about 45 minutes before it really started to overheat. But most people don't run like that. I understand. So my concern is if you do get into loads like EV charging, like Bitcoin mining, you're going to have these constant high loads working at the capacity of the machine. It seemingly overheats. And at way too high of a temperature does it overheat. I've never seen this above 72 degrees centigrade working it super hard. This one doubled that, hot to touch, kind of scary. So that kind of bothered me. Is it just this inverter, my only one I've ever used? I don't know. But anyway, so seriously consider when you look at these two hybrid machines, the cost is pretty equivalent per kilowatt. And installation, yeah, they're roughly the same amount of time. But when you're designing an ESS, you want an energy storage system that's going to last you for a long, long time. Don't skimp on an inverter. I still think this is the premium choice, the premium machine versus the EG18. They've come a long way, but this is by far a superior machine. So don't be fooled by the names, the spec sheets. It tested in real world. This will outperform this in almost any and every aspect of the specifications. They also don't specify the surge capacity of the machine for short-term surges. This is this can go 24,000 for 10 seconds and 30,000 for 100 milliseconds. There's nothing reported on their spec sheet of what the surge capability is. So even without soft starts, this can run a 4 to 5 ton HVAC unit. This cannot, and unless somebody can prove me otherwise, maybe it can. But they're not. They don't have their spec sheets up with the same detail. That they're kind of confusing when you put the two spec sheets next to each other. It's like, what are we comparing here? They're not very similar in many ways. So that's kind of a wrap. We're going to do phase 2. We're going to come back and do the same tests on the 15K. Though I've got 250 of these things out there, plus I'm doing real world tests for the last however many, 5, 6, 7 years. And so I've got a lot of experience with the Sol-Ark machine, of course. And no, Sol-Ark didn't pay me to do this video. So I will say that. So anyway, I'll let you know on phase 2. We got it back up and running. We shut this one down, got this going. Again, same batteries. I'll be back. This is Engineer 775 signing out.